everybody. Welcome to Camel City Chat. And I'm here with, I guess we're longtime friends now. I don't know how long this has been, though.
Well, this goes all the way back to the bookstore over on off of Country Club.
So we got to think about it.
Off of Peace Haven and Robin Hood.
Yeah, so we got to think that was... I came back in 91 from college, and so we're thinking like 91 and 94 is when I met you the first time.
Probably, yeah. That's when
And what's interesting is a lot of people don't know who you are, which is kind of interesting to me, because you've written a very famous song, and when I say that, I'm like, well, and then once I talk a little bit about you, everybody knows who you are then. But this is Dave Combs. David Combs is accomplished a musician, let's say.
Okay. That's
pianist.
Mm-hmm.
I know where you learned that from, by the way. And then photographer.
All right.
I know where you learned that from, too. So, we're going to talk to him about, did your family have anything to do with colorizing the Wizard of Oz? Nope, we'll get to that later.
Nope.
But
not quite.
Not quite. And then also now, an author. Yep. So you got a book coming out, and what's interesting is we're recording this ahead of time, but this will air on the morning of your book launch, which is October 20th.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're doing a virtual launch too, which I'm interested in hearing about this too. And I know you guys didn't color the Wizard of Oz, but I know colorization was kind of your dad's like little forte that we're going to talk about. But let's talk about the 5 questions. We'll ask you 3 now and then 2 towards the end of the show.
All right, that's fair enough.
The first question is, and I already know the answer to this one, is where are you from? Okay. And then how long have you been in Winston?
All right, I was born and raised in a little town in East Tennessee called Irwin, Tennessee, up in Unicoi County. And it's up between Asheville and Johnson City, down in a valley there. And I was born and raised there, went all the way through high school there. And then after college, I went to college in ETSU in Johnson City, Tennessee.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm an App fan. It gets
That's all right. I know it's with the ETSU and App were across the hill. So, and my wife is an App.
I know this. That's why I'm on the right side of this discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to ETSU, graduated, and then when I graduated with my math degree, I came to Winston-Salem to work with AT&T, or back then it was Western Electric.
Oh my gosh! Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I came over here as a computer programmer. That was my career. I thought.
The cards?
Oh, they called them IBM 8080 cards.
The cards.
I'm dating myself here, and
you feed them in.
Punch cards, and you punched your programs, and there was no such thing as a mouse or a live terminal. You had to punch your cards, hand it over the counter to the person to load it in the computer and run it.
And basically, for people who don't know, it almost looks like the machine almost looked like what they use to count money now, where it goes.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it reads it in.
Yeah, you put it in a hopper, and it reads the cards real fast, and that was how it got the data into the computer.
And so, if you had a stack this high, the sentence might be "See John run."
Yeah.
For it to print it on the screen. I mean, it was crazy, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. It was very. I remember when we first came out with terminal access, where I could actually type my own program in on a terminal instead of having to punch it on a card. Right. Oh, I thought I'd arrived in heaven. I could type it in, and it would go across town to the computer center, and I didn't have to get in the car and go take my cards over there.
Right.
So that was quite a.
And how long were you at AT&T?
I worked for AT&T, Western Electric. It became AT&T, and then Lucent. I worked 22 and a half years.
Wow.
From 69, I quit my job finally in 1992.
Okay. All right.
So then that brought me to Winston-Salem. I stayed here for the most part all of those years until they closed the plant at Lexington Road in 1988. You may remember that.
Yeah.
That was a traumatic event for this whole town, actually.
Oh, it's the whole, it's that whole south side there.
Right, well, 3,500 people worked there. And so everybody either had to go to work somewhere else, they had to retire, or quit. It was just a really traumatic experience.
And then now some people went to, like down near First Baptist Church. Isn't that part of it now?
Or then that we had some satellite locations around town, and Renolda Road just outside of Wake Forest,
which is now the BB&T University.
Yes, in fact, that's the building I started working in. And the last building I worked in when I left AT&T, 22 and a half years later, having in the middle of it, I went several other places.
Right.
I told people, I said, that was a pretty big building. It took me 22 and a half years to get from one end of it to the other.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. And so obviously, did you meet Linda there in coming over the mountain, or did you meet her in Winston?
I met her in Winston.
Okay.
I came over here with my roommate, Brian Arrington. He got a job with Western Electric, too, and he was a technical writer.
Right.
And we worked in the same building, and so we roomed together. We got us an apartment over on the Regency Apartments. This was a singles-only.
The Regency Apartments.
You remember those?
Oh, my brother lived at the Regency.
Oh, we did?
Oh, yeah.
He may have been my next-door neighbor, you know.
Yeah, back when he was a DJ at the Forum Music Theater.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Bryant and I roomed
What was
together.
it? Chip Stack was over there, Randy Shiley, my brother Ted, a bunch of people.
I'm sure I met him at one point. But,
Yeah.
But
They
Linda.
were crazy.
Yeah. But
You
I
were
lived there.
crazy.
It was a great place to
Right.
live, and it was full of singles, and there was a lot of girls there.
Yeah.
So I met a lot of people there, and a couple of girlfriends. And I had this was Labor Day 1969. Labor Day 1969. I had been to Tennessee to visit my mom, and on my way back, my roommate his parents lived in Kingsport, so I picked him up in Kingsport, went to a computer or a music store and bought a set of speakers.
Right.
I just had 2 paychecks under my belt, and I said, I gotta buy me some new stereo speakers for
Right.
my stereo system.
Yeah.
So I got me 2 Fisher XP7B speakers.
That's your whole payroll.
That was about my whole.
Yeah.
They were a couple $100.
Yeah,
to
no,
buy
that's
that.
huge. Yeah.
So I was excited about
Right.
my new speakers. Got back to Winston-Salem on Labor Day, and I got my speakers, hooked them up. Oh, it sounded
Put
good.
'em out on the patio.
No, this was inside. But
Okay.
Turned it up. Oh, it sounded so good. So I called my 2 girl friends that I knew there in the Regency, Susan and Shirley. I said, hey, I've got these new speakers. How about y'all bringing some records? Records are these round plastic things,
12-inch vinyl. Yeah.
Yep. So anyhow, I said, bring some records and come on over. Let's listen to some good music tonight.
Right.
Okay, we'll come. How about come at 6 o'clock? I said, okay. And they said, well, can we bring somebody? We got somebody visiting with us. And I said, sure, come on, more the merrier. So at 6 o'clock, Susan and Shirley show up at the door, and there's this nice-looking young lady standing there next to them. So they introduced me. Say, hey, this is Linda Morrison. I said, oh, nice to meet you.
I'm going to interrupt you. He married up. I know his wife. Go ahead.
You're right about that.
Holy cow.
Well, my life changed that night when I met Linda Morrison.
Getting chills.
Ooh, it's
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
So
Good thing you got the Apple Watch with the EKG on it,
I
right?
can run it. My heart rate's already up there, I'm sure.
Yep.
So I met Linda that night when she came over with Susan and Shirley to listen to music. We sat there for, 3 or 4, 10 o'clock or so before we finally said, okay, we need to call it a day because we got to go to work tomorrow.
Right.
So anyway, over that evening, we just clicked. Everything we talked about, yeah, me too. Me too. I do that too. Our parents, yeah, we went to both at Baptist churches, and her mom and daddy, really, she was an only child,
Right.
and so she played the piano for her church, and I was a minister of music at my church in Tennessee, and so we just, the more we talked, the more we just kind of clicked.
Right.
So we set up our first date before we left that night. And I invited all 3 of them because I couldn't figure out how to tactfully invite just Linda
Right.
with Susan and Shirley. They were 2 single girls too.
Right, yeah.
So I said, let's
more the merrier.
More the merrier. Let's go to a place that most people around here will probably remember called the Polyrosa.
I don't remember the Polyrosa.
It's up in King Tobaccoville.
Oh, that's
the
the
music
Country Corral.
Well,
Now it's the Country Corral, or
no,
was.
it went out of business.
it
It
went
was
out
out in a farmhouse
Okay.
out in the middle of nowhere up in
Okay.
King Tobaccoville. And it's one of these places that was owned by the Ryerson family. Slick Ryerson was the owner, and
Right.
he worked at Western Electric with me. But this was a place where on Friday nights all the local people would bring their instruments and come and have just a pickup session, a jam session on Friday nights. And it became so popular that they started charging, because the ladies they'd cook a country meal. You could, for $5, you'd go in and they'd have country ham and biscuits and gravy and mashed potatoes and
You
mac
were wild,
and cheese.
man. You invited all 3 of them. That was $20.
I know it. It was something, but
And we haven't even gotten the second question yet. Keep
I
going.
know. But
Yeah.
and so come Friday, mysteriously the other 2 girls dropped out. They couldn't
That's
come.
Linda's.
Well, I've never known the real story behind that.
Hey, guess what? Since we know she's going to do my show, I'll ask
Man,
that question.
hey,
Don't watch, Linda. Don't watch this. I'm gonna
that's
get
right.
you.
Just
Yeah. But no, and the one thing that people may not know about you is your wife has been, well, she's good with money, is what I will say.
yeah.
Assistant Commerce Secretary under Bush. She's currently the comptroller for the state of North
She's
Carolina.
the controller for the state of North Carolina.
So and we've told her that she's got to do the show too.
Yeah,
And I've known her as long as I've known you. You guys have, and I think you've been on. Did we talk on Book Talk or something on SJS at some point?
We may have, because I was on SJS many
Yeah.
times with Glenn Scott, and we
I talked to him the other day
You did?
via Facebook. I need to get Stable and I are kidding around about going to interview him.
Oh, I have been trying to get a hold of Glenn.
All right, I'll get him.
I love that guy.
All right,
and
of course,
if
Camel
he's
last
watching,
week.
please get in touch with me.
I'll get him. I'll get both of them for you.
Yeah, that's great.
So the first question: how long you been here? So you've been in Winston-Salem since 1969.
69. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what year I was born. It wasn't 69.
I figure that.
It was 68.
This happens a lot.
The second question, it was 68. The second question is, what is your favorite place to eat? Now, when I ask that question, you got to be honest with me. You can't say I like all kinds of places. You got to give me, where's the last place you and Linda went? So give me some good places you like to eat.
River Birch Lodge.
Nice place.
I call it Eddie's place.
Okay.
Everybody knows Eddie Shapiro.
Yeah.
And so Eddie's my buddy, and so I love.
They do a good salmon.
Oh man, they're everything. I love their chèvre salad. I mean, it's
Okay.
just everything there is great.
All right.
When we want to go get a good meal,
And it ain't far from the house either.
No, it's not far. Like yesterday, I picked up lunch at Mr. Lou's.
Okay.
You
Everybody loves Mr. Lou's.
I mean, they're a busy place.
Yeah.
Great food, great price. And then if we want to really go celebrate, we'll go to Ryan's.
Right.
Can't
go wrong with Ryan's.
And I'm so sorry that Paul's closed, because that was a great Italian. That was a great place. And I like TJ's for burgers, and I like if you want barbecue, I love Real Q.
Right.
That's just a go-to place. So, we
You don't except
we eat
for
around.
Except for Ryan's, you don't venture much out from that 27146 area
Well,
code
that's
there.
we live right where we're getting close to everything that's good.
So we moved from Louisville over to Clemens. So we're on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah.
So we've started to do some, like Three Bulls is close to the house.
Yeah.
Or Chang Tai is good. We've done that. And then, of course, tonight I'm going to Incendiary because a friend of mine's having an event. After we're done here, I'm going to run over there and just say hi for a minute and then go home.
Yeah.
But it's just amazing. We interviewed Peyton from Mission Pizza yesterday. But it airs next week. Okay. And it's just, to have, and Adam Andrews has been on, to have all these people that just care and show so much towards what they present to us as consumers. Mm-hmm. We're really lucky here.
We are. This is a great place to live. Having gotten here in 1969 and really only left for the few years when AT&T closed and we had to do something, but we came back. So we're basically, I've been in Winston-Salem longer than I've been anywhere else on this earth. So it's a great place.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we've got 1 and 2 questions. Number 3 question is what's your favorite thing to do around Winston-Salem?
My favorite thing to do?
You can't go to Ponderosa anymore.
No. Well, I guess our favorite thing to do, both me and my wife, is we love to ride our bikes on the Muddy Creek Greenway.
Isn't it beautiful?
It is fabulous, and from our neighborhood, they built a connector from our neighborhood over to Muddy Creek.
All right.
From Cedar Trail all the way over. It's about and a bridge across. So we can go out of our garage on the bicycles and ride for 10 miles. Mm-hmm. And it's just great. I meet all kinds of interesting people on the Greenway. I always take my music with me. You know the story of Johnny Appleseed, planting apple seeds everywhere, or trees everywhere. You can call me Davy Music Seed. I take my CDs on my bike, and I see a family there that has a bunch of little kids. I'll say, y'all have a CD player? And they'll say, yeah. I said, well, let me give you a CD of some music that you can play for your kids. I guarantee it'll put them to sleep at night and that kind of thing. So
we said it was relaxing, but it wasn't. It shouldn't put you to sleep.
Well, it put a little kid to sleep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But it's great.
Right.
But we love that ride on the Greenway, because when we're not, our favorite place to ride in the car is up on the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Yeah, you like Blowing Rock.
Oh, I love Blowing Rock.
Yeah,
yes.
so you've actually been published a couple times in the Blowing Rock thing up there.
I have had probably 200 or 300 of my photographs published in the Blowing Rocket newspaper. Back when Jerry Burns was the editor, he and I were big buddies. And I'd send him pictures, and next thing I know, they're in the paper.
You know that gas station that's now the sandwich shop? Right on Main Street. They've now they've took all the pumps out of that. Yeah.
Yes.
I met, so the lady that helps with the controlling of that one, all right, it's her brother that owns her or something. She does all his books or something.
Yeah.
I met her husband at a Panthers game. We were at a Panthers game, and he left his phone on the table next to me, and ended up calling calling a number on there and say, hey, you know who this is? And they got in touch with one friend and handed it back to him, and I've been by to see him a couple times there.
Wow.
You just can't have, and they've redone the park. Have you seen that they redid the park?
No.
The Blowing Rock Park.
No,
you need
I have
to go
not.
check it out.
Wow.
It's even better than it was, and it was beautiful then. All right, we got to take a break, but I would like for you to hand me that Guidepost magazine that I'm going to assume is from 1994.
You got that right.
All right, see, I told you I knew something. We're going to talk next about how this book turned into this book.
You're right.
How's that connection?
Oh, man, that's a segue. That's great.
We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat.
All right.
Welcome back to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson. I'm here with Dave Combs, who is a photographer, an author now, as of this morning, right? Or published. Well, published. I got the book early.
That's right.
Yeah, but there's a book launch that's going to be going on today. We're going to learn more about that. And also, in your spare time, you're a musician. But this article right here is one of the main reasons why we're here today from Guidepost Magazine. But before we get to that, we're going to leave people on the hanger here. You ready?
I'm ready.
I talked about the colorization of the Wizard of Oz. So we are in small town Tennessee, not very far away from Dolly, actually.
Exactly.
Right? So, and I actually went overseas for my senior year trip in '86 with a group of kids from Kingsport. So I made travels to Kingsport after that in college to go see some of them.
Yeah.
But that whole area from ETSU up to UT over to Appalachian, there's a lot of culture, love, and music in there.
Oh, yes, big time.
And so before we get to the music part of things, I want to talk about the photography because I want to dedicate a whole bunch of time to music and stuff, but I also want people to understand this. Your dad was an expert at colorizing.
Yeah, the people today probably don't even...
And this is
probably 1940s.
Right. So...
40s and early 50s.
When you click the button on the picture to take it from color to black and white, your dad was manually doing it the other way.
Yes, because back then...
explain this.
Well, color photography really was not really prevalent for quite a number of years. Most every photographs that you got were black and white. Mm-hmm. And there was a big demand for colorizing those to make them look like they were a color photograph. Right. And you did this with these ink or color pigments. Somewhere I still have, I think, in my boxes of stuff from my dad, a box of these. They were like little bottles of oil-based or some kind of special color, every color. And he had the gift of being able to take, it's like airbrushing today. Right. When you want to airbrush, your artist will certainly appreciate that. But this was airbrushing with just a pigment and a brush on a black and white photograph. So he could take a black and white and put the skin tones on there, including the shading. So it wasn't just like a paint by number, one color. It was shading and so forth. And there was an art to mixing those to make it look like, he can make your shirt just look as blue as the one you've got on right now.
And so now, were we doing very small pictures or what size?
Probably 8 by 10s.
8 by 10s,
normally
right.
It was something that somebody wanted to frame.
Like the church picture. We had the church
Yeah.
picture taken and, sitting down and standing behind, and he did all the color tones.
Yeah, or, a picture of a little kid or
Right.
something. And I have some of my baby pictures, for example, that were colorized.
Now, is this like the white backgrounds where the kids laying on the thing and that, something like that type
Could
of thing?
be,
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They did that. I know about colorizing, but then I'm trying to think of where we had some of those. I think both my brothers were born in 56 and 59, 57, I think, 57 and 59. Mm-hmm. So they would have had those done probably at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, he loved taking pictures too. He had one of these Bellows cameras that was a large frame format camera that I remember I was always fascinated with this camera, and that was the beginning of color photography. We'd get some color film and take with that camera. But his love of photography and that kind of thing, I think, rubbed off on me, because as soon as I was old enough, I can remember getting a Brownie box camera, or when Polaroid came out, I thought, oh wow, Polaroid! You take your picture and come out in about 2 minutes. You had the real picture here. Mm-hmm. You didn't have to send it off.
They brought those back as a thing. Now I've found something that I love right now, and I cannot remember what the name of it is. It's about this big. HP makes it. Sprocket. It's a HP Sprocket. It's this big.
All right.
I take a picture with my phone, and then I just go into the Sprocket app, press a button, and it prints out of this wireless printer.
Really?
It's a 2x3 picture that's a sticker. So like when Laura has a friend over or something, we'll take a picture of two of them together, and then they each have a sticker. And they love that.
I'll be doggone.
Yeah, so I mean it's been interesting. Now, speaking of photography, you didn't take this picture.
I took the picture of me.
Did you really?
I took that picture of me with my iPhone, believe it or not.
See, I thought I had you, because I know you take pictures of everything else.
Yeah.
So this is you. You've taken this picture. You do beautiful, beautiful photographs of so many different things. And I know your favorite, I think, is probably flowers, isn't it?
Oh, you can tell that from if you look on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
I'm posting pictures of roses or any kind of close-up of a flower with a bee on it or a bug on it. I love those things.
Well, that's awesome. So you had desire to do more of the developing, or no? Or I mean, you obviously still photograph and love it.
Yeah.
Is your favorite camera your iPhone?
It is.
It's
used to
crazy,
be I have a Nikon 800 at home and a D800, but I haven't taken a picture with that. I took some at the beach this summer, but usually the camera in my pocket is the one I go to.
What iPhone do you have now? The 12?
I have the 12,
Okay.
and I have a 13 that'll be here in about a week.
So my buddy loves the 13 camera. He really does. I have a 12 as well.
Yeah.
But he got the 13 camera and he really likes it. And
Oh, I can't wait with these cameras are phenomenal. I cannot believe the detail you get out of this tiny little camera.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
yeah, they've changed real estate for us. I mean, it's you can take pictures with an iPhone.
Yeah.
And some of the commercials you see now where they're filming small movies with it and stuff. We use that camera. We also I have another one. What do I have? A Nikon, I think, or Canon. M50. I have a Canon M50, and you use the
Nikon D7200.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then obviously we do the lavalier mics or these mics or whatever, but they seem to do better for the podcasting side of things and things like that. But I collect coins, and I'll watch some of those videos, and those guys will just set their phone up and do that on levels and stuff.
Oh, it's amazing.
So it is interesting. Nowadays you always remember when someone had an event like a fire at their house, they lose everything. Now, all my pictures of my kid are on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why you can't
and uploaded to the cloud.
Yeah.
So.
There's no reason to not walk through your house and film everything you've got.
Right. Yeah. But it is crazy how everything we have is now on that.
Mm-hmm.
And remember this. My big computer when I was growing up was Commodore 64.
Okay.
All right. So I've got more. Think about that. How big would the computer have been?
Well,
the city of Winston-Salem?
Probably, because the first computer I learned to program on was an IBM 1620 with 30K.
Right.
That's K with just
30,000
memory. That's it. My phone has 9,000 times more storage than the computer that I had when I was working at ETSU.
It's nuts, isn't it?
It's nuts. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right, we are a photographer. All right.
Love photography.
Right. And since you and you can say since you put it on something that you're a professional photographer now too, right?
Well, I guess so.
You've been published, right?
Yeah.
And then the thing this is interesting to me because I've always wanted to write, and I never have, and I tell that to every guest, and it's that. But you did some stuff with Blowing Rocks and in photos. What happened with Guidepost? And I guess before we get to that, still we got to do the musician part of things, because the musician part of things you wrote about in here, right?
Right.
All right. So your mom, your dad, your grandma, anybody else I need to think of that played?
I have a lot of cousins and other relatives
But
too.
you grew up with the three of them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they played.
They played.
And smack you on the knuckles or anything like that?
No,
Anything
no.
good like
This
that?
was like they played beautifully, and
Right.
just being around them playing inspired me to want to.
So
it's a.
It's kind of like speaking Spanish around you. You suddenly learn Spanish, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure
I'm
you
picking
know.
on him, folks. He knows this. Yeah.
But being around my dad, and he'd show me this neat little song. Mama sent me to the spring, told me not to stay. Fell in love with a pretty little girl, couldn't get away, and it's a neat little song, and I can still play it today. But that was the first song I ever learned to play, and my daddy showed me how to do that. And he played by ear. He didn't. He could barely read a little bit of music, but he'd just soon play his own thing.
Right.
Now, my mama, she took lessons, and she could play from the hymnal and play the notes.
Right.
And my grandma Combs, she was born in 1918 and 94.
Right.
And so she learned her music by what they call shape notes. And your folks can research that, but it's really music that the shape of the note determined whether it was a do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Okay.
Each of those had a different shape. And so they called it shape notes. And so in fact, they still have shape notes singing places that go on even today. But anyway, my grandma
I
played.
can't read music, and now you're telling me that there's even something else. Why do you do this to me?
I don't know. just to tease
Did you ever take music lessons?
I did. As soon as my hands were big enough to really fit on the keyboard and everything. About 7 or 8 years old, I started taking piano lessons. Took for a couple of years. And then we moved to Florida, and that kind of stopped the music lessons for a while. But I always continued to play. I'd sit down and I loved to just play from the hymnal or make up something. And I learned chords.
Or it's actually communication between your dad and you too.
Yeah.
I mean, if Dad has a moment, he's sitting at the piano, you sit down next to him and you play something else.
Yeah.
What a bonding moment.
Yeah. At least I could hear him and watch him play.
Right.
And realize that he wasn't playing from the music that was in front of him. It was coming out of here.
Right.
They call it head arrangements or just playing by ear. And so that, I guess, was I figured, well, I should be able to do that too. Mm-hmm. So, and I did. And I spent 1 year in Florida with my father. My mother and father separated when I was about 10 years old. And by my 11th grade, I went to Florida to spend a year with him. He was in Bradenton, Florida. As with any separation, kids always think, maybe I can do something to get my mom and dad back together.
Right.
It's always on your mind, and it almost never works out that way because the kids don't really understand everything that led up to a separation.
And it's not their fault either. That's the one
It's
thing I
not your
always hear
fault,
about.
but I decided, well, I need to go and see for myself and talk to my father myself about what's the deal here. So I went to Florida, and at the end of my 10th grade in summer.
So this is like 6 years later, because they separated when you were 10?
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
6 years later, you're going to get them back together.
Yeah. I guess that was my naive thinking.
No, you're fine. And the reason why we're kind of, I want to make sure that we cover some things, because we had to take a quick break because we got hot in here quick, and we're both coughing. But you're living with your dad over near Sarasota, and this was the exponential year for you in your musical career because you guys did something for the Tropicana people?
My father worked for Tropicana Products.
Okay, right.
And so that was his full-time job. And while he worked there, he got to know the owner of the company, Mr. Anthony Rossi, who was a strong Christian and wanted to have a church service for his crews that were on the Honduras juice ships that came in to deliver oranges from Honduras. And these would go into Tampa Bay, and on Sunday morning, his nephew, Russell Riegler, my father and I would go out to the bay and take onto the ship a heavy pump organ, carry it up onto the ship, set it up, and I would play hymns. My father would lead the singing in some hymns, and Russell would give a Bible lesson in Spanish for the crew from Honduras.
Right.
And at the beginning of the summer, I couldn't play hymns very well. And I apologize.
You're fine.
And I don't know what is.
No, you're good. No, you're good.
Just drink some water.
I don't know what. At the beginning of the summer, I couldn't play hymns very well, by the end of the summer, all those Sundays going out there, that was enough motivation for me to learn how to play hymns. And so in between Sunday and Sunday, I wasn't doing anything during the week, and it was too hot to go outside. We didn't have air conditioning, so I was inside. I'd play the piano for a while, practice hymns in the hymn book.
Right.
I'd get tired of that sound. I'd go over and go on the pump organ. I'd play it for a while, and then I'd get tired of that sound, and then go back to the piano. But I'd probably practice 7 or 8 hours a day during the week.
Because this is the summer.
Summertime, I wasn't doing anything.
You weren't in school.
I wasn't in school. So I practiced, and by the end of the summer, I was able to play every hymn in the book. And
Holy
so
cow.
I really, I guess I'm the only person in the world that learned to play the piano on the deck of a ship in the Tampa Bay of Florida.
All right, so you can read music at this point, correct?
Yes,
Because of your lessons up in Tennessee.
right.
All right, so I got a question for you, but I think we're probably going to take a break. So my
Okay.
question is how did we get from playing to writing?
Okay.
We'll be right back with more Camel City Chat. Welcome back to Camel City Chat, and I think we're going okay now.
I believe so.
Yeah, it's hot in here. That's the one thing. That one light gets a little warm in here, and sometimes that'll get us. But so you're let's get us back here. So you're in Tennessee. You come to Florida to live with your dad. Your parents separated, and then you're down in Florida. You've learned how to play every hymn through the summer. I'm just not believing this. Most people will be out playing, you know.
Yeah.
I of course was video games kid, so I could have been playing Atari or something. You accomplished something. So I'm still not good at anything. But now, how do you move from playing to writing? That's a big jump.
It is. And in fact, this is a lesson for teachers and parents and everyone alike. Nobody ever told me that I could write music.
Right.
And so it never occurred in my mind that, you know, I love music, I love playing, and I love being around people who play, but the dots never got connected with me with, well, Dave, why don't you write some music?
Right.
Never occurred to me. Well, fast forward to 1980, and I'm here in my job in Western Electric, and I've been here for 11 years at that point, and I get a phone call that my father was killed in a car wreck.
Oh no.
3 days before Christmas, 1980. It's the phone call nobody ever wants to get. Well, that just devastated me because that was really my first taste of real close grief up close. And I think, thinking back on it, was because I wrote Rachel's song, the music to Rachel's song, about a month later, in January of 1981. And in thinking back about it, my way of expressing my emotions and relaxing has always been sit down at the piano and just play something. You know, I love the sound of the piano, and I love to just make up something and play along with the radio or a song that sheet music I love to play or something like that. And so I feel like that when I sat down one evening and I had just finished tuning my old 100-year-old piano. It was 100 years old Kanabi piano. It wouldn't hold its tune. And so every once in a while I'd get my tuning hammer out and I'd tighten up the strings and tune it up. I could get it pretty close. Not like a professional piano tuner, but I could get it close. And every time I did that, it would sound so much better and so good. And every time I tuned it, I loved to just sit down and play something that would really sound pretty. And this one particular evening, I remember sitting down after tuning my piano, and I just sat down and I started to play a song in the key of C. Mm-hmm. And what I played, the notes just came to me as I was playing it, and it seemed like I was playing a song that had existed for 1,000,000 years. And I played a verse of it, and then I played another verse, and then I played a chorus of this song, and I played the whole thing all the way through. And then It never changed, and every time I would play that
Are you
song,
recording it at any point?
No.
Okay.
That's just me and the piano down in the basement. Linda's still at work.
Right.
And so I played it, and I really never even thought about it as being a writing of a song.
Right.
I just played it.
Just jamming.
I was just jamming, and I loved the way it sounded.
Right.
Well, fast forward a few days, and Linda comes home from work. She was working at Wachovia at the time. She comes in the door, and she says,
Money again. Yeah.
And so she comes in the door. She says, Dave, I've been humming this song. I can't get it out of my head. You know how you get a song stuck in your head. And she says, what is the name of this song? She says, you play it on the piano all the time. And so she hummed a little bit of it. And I said, doesn't have a name, Linda. And she says, what? You play it all the time. I said, no, it's just something I just play. I just made it up, I guess. And so she said, wow, you got to write this down. Have you written it down? I said, no, it's just, I've got it up here. And she said, no, you need to write it down because something happens to you, that song be lost.
Right.
So I did write it down, and so I'd play it every once in a while, and we tried to think of a name for it. You know, when you come up with something, you want to name it.
Right.
But nothing we ever came up with seemed to fit. Fast forwarded a couple of years, some friends of ours had a little baby girl named Rachel. Mm-hmm. And they asked me and Linda if we would be her godparents. So we said, sure. So at Rachel's christening that December, we were sitting in the church listening to the preacher say all these nice things about little baby Rachel and whatever. And I'm sitting there next to Linda, and I said, hey, do you think it'd be okay if I played this little song I've written? Because up at the front of the church was a beautiful grand piano sitting right in the middle of the platform. And she said, yeah, I think so. So after the formal service was over, I went up to the family and the preacher, and I said, would it be all right if I played this little song that I've written? And they said, sure. So I went up to the piano, and I sat down, and I started playing Rachel's song, or playing the song.
Right.
And about halfway into it, I noticed that I've got some tears running down my cheeks, and I hear the sniffles out in the crowd. You know, people are getting emotional about this song, and so when
onions.
I guess
In church.
and
Yeah.
so when I finished the song, before the notes even finally completely died away from the piano, I looked up and little Rachel was there in her arms of her mother, and I said, from now on, this song's going to be called Rachel's Song. Mm-hmm. And that's how it got its name, and it just fit. It just was the perfect name for the song.
And so, and we'll put a link so people can get and hear Rachel's song on your website and get more information about you and all that stuff. But let's go now. How does Gary Prim get it?
Well,
I mean, you guys are like this, right? You just call up Gary and
now I can.
yeah,
but
now
back,
you can,
but back then,
yeah, and you know what? You got Jack Canfield. I mean, you guys are tight, yeah. All right, so go ahead.
But anyway, fast forward another 3 years. This is 1986.
Right.
And 3 years have gone by. Nothing has really been done with Rachel's song. And Linda says, you know, why don't we? You're working in Nashville, Tennessee all the time now. I was doing some traveling and spending a week at a time there. And she said, while you're there in Nashville, why don't you go find a studio and get a demo recording made of Rachel's song?
Right.
You know, something we could have and enjoy and give to Rachel, and her family could enjoy it.
Right.
So I said, that's a good idea. So one evening while I was in Nashville, I was driving around, and if you've ever been to Nashville, you know there's a place called Music Square.
Right.
It's got the Country Music Hall of Fame and all kinds of BMI and ASCAP and studios and everything's right there. So I'm driving around looking for a studio that I could stop in and ask if they'd do a recording. Well, it's like 6 or 7 o'clock, and as we say down south, they roll up the sidewalks at 5:30. So
you're getting prepped for the next day.
Yeah. So, but then I spotted a building that looked like a log cabin barn, and it had a water wheel out front. And then the sign on the thing said Music Mill. I thought, okay. So I drove around the side, and sure enough, there was a car parked in the parking lot. And I pulled in the gravel parking lot and looked in the glass door, and there was a man sitting behind a desk. I said, okay. So I got out, knocked on the door, and this guy came to the door and unlocked the door, opened it. He says, hi, I'm George Clinton. Can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm Dave Combs. I've written a little song I'd like to get a demo made of, and I'm looking for a studio. And he said, well, come on in. And as I came in, I looked around the walls, and here's a big picture of Glenn Campbell, and here's a big picture of Alabama, the group, and Forrester Sisters, and gold records framed all over on all the walls. And I realized this was no small deal that I had walked into.
Right.
And so I said, George, I have never been in a studio before. And he says, well, nobody's recording right now. Let me show you around. So he took me on a great tour of this fantastic recording studio called the Music Mill. And I was just blown away with all the big recording room, and the console was 32 tracks or whatever. It looked like something you could launch a spaceship from.
Oh yeah.
So
no one knows what all those knobs do. I don't care what they say.
That's what the recording engineers, they know all about that stuff. So I said, well, George, how much does this place cost? He says, $125 an hour plus an engineer. And I said, wow, that's a lot of money, because this is 1986 now.
Right.
So I said, wow. And he said, well, don't worry. He said, the guy that owns this place owns another one across the street, and it's only $15 an hour. I said, now that's my speed. I can handle that. So anyway, I said, well, now, one other question. Do you know a piano player that would be willing to play a demo of my song I've written? And he said, he thought for a second. He said, yeah, I think I know somebody. Let me look him up for you. And he went to his Rolodex and said, here's a number for Gary Prim.
Please, gosh, no. You've got to be kidding.
A Rolodex. You know what a Rolodex is.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, here's Gary Prim's number.
Well, back then it was on a piece of paper,
right,
in a card thing. So he gave me Gary's number, and so I said, okay, thank you very much. And I went back to the hotel, called Gary's number, and I got his answering machine and said, hey, Gary, this is Dave Combs. George Clinton said to call you to do a demo. Call me back. And so 30 minutes later, phone rings. Hey, this is Gary. Can I help you? I said, yeah. And I told him what I wanted. I'd written this song, and would you do a demo for me? He said, oh, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And he said, well, just send me a lead sheet and a cassette tape recording of you playing it. I said, fine, I can do that, but tell me what's a lead sheet? I was showing my ignorance of the music business. And he said, oh, it's just the music, the melody line and the chords is all it is. Oh, I got that. So anyway, makes the long story shorter, it was a couple of weeks later we met in this little tiny studio across the street from
$15 an hour.
$15 an hour.
Right.
And I met Gary for the first time. He comes walking in with his Yamaha DX7 synthesizer and sets up it in there on an old Apple. They didn't just set it up on an old Apple crate. That's all they had to set it on. And they had a Yamaha baby grand piano. And so Gary starts playing my song, Rachel's song, on the baby grand piano. And I'm in the control room with the engineer. And I'm not believing my ears.
Right.
When you hear the term demo, you normally think, well, that sounds pretty cheap.
Right.
A demo is just something cheap. But like and we know around here in the furniture industry, a demo of a piece of furniture is as good as it's going to get.
Right.
It's top notch. Well, the same thing is true for music. When you get a demo made, it is top drawer. Well, I learned that lesson the good way with Gary Prim. He started playing my song, and I just was blown away with what I was hearing.
Right.
And I thought he was done. And he said, nope, I got to set up and add some strings and other things to make it a fuller sound.
Right.
So he played more tracks from his synthesizer with electric piano and horns and strings. And when he was all done and we played it back in the control room, it was as good as any song I'd ever heard on the radio.
Right.
And it just blew me away. I didn't know what to say. So that was how I met Gary and got Rachel's song recorded. And once I got back home, I played it for a friend of mine from here in Winston-Salem that a lot of people around here will know, Bob McHone. You remember Bob? He was a voice on WSJS radio for years, WGLD and High Point. He's done a ton of commercials, and he still does a lot of voiceover and acting and so forth. He's a wonderful guy. Lives out in Kernersville. And so I played Rachel's song for Bob, and he says, Dave, you've got to let me play this on my radio program. And I had forgotten that Bob had a Saturday morning 3-hour big band jazz radio program on WKLM in Greensboro. It was 94.5, easy listening station.
Right.
And so that Saturday, I loaned him my master tape because that's all I had really at the time. And the radio station made a recording of the the song, and he played it on Saturday morning. And the next thing I know is I get a call from the station manager saying, Dave, you're not going to believe what just happened. He said, Bob started playing his Rachel's song on his program, and our phones at the radio station locked up. He said, they're just flooded with calls, people calling in wanting to know, what is the name of that song you just played? Will you play it again? And tell me more about this guy Combs from Winston-Salem and all that. And he said, I've never seen this before. And so I thought, well, you know, maybe I do have something here that's worth exploring and getting on a broader scale. And sure enough, everybody that I sent it to in the radio industry and radio stations, they play it.
Right.
And I ended up with Rachel's song played on every easy listening radio station in the United States.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it went from just a piece of paper in my piano bench to getting its name, to getting recorded, to getting played on the radio, to getting played on the radio all over the country, and even in Australia. It was #1 song in Australia for 2 years, of all things. And now Rachel's song is played all over the world on the internet, thousands and thousands of times every month, all over the world. Anybody that has access to the internet can stream it on, you know, iTunes, Pandora, iHeartRadio, all those places, Spotify.
That's crazy.
It is, and so it's just the song it'll be here long after I'm gone, and I believe that song will be down as one that it's a standard, and it'll be played hopefully 1,000 years from now.
What's Rachel doing now?
Well, she is a grown woman now, and I have deliberately protected her privacy from her whole family. And when you read my book about Rachel's song, you won't find any ties to where she is or anything, and that's deliberately. I want to protect her privacy because I have experienced what happens when your name gets out there in the media. You know, the phone starts ringing, and hey, I got a call last night from.
But she's doing well.
Oh, she's doing well. She really is, and her whole family. So,
well, we're gonna take a break, and then when we come back, we got to talk about your book.
Yeah, okay.
We'll be right back. More Camel City Chat and Dave Combs. All right. Welcome back to Camel City Chat. I'm John McPherson. I'm here with Dave Combs, and I started, I think, in the first segment talking about how something out of here came to this. But so, how did, after all the stuff we've heard with Rachel's song, you wrote about how Rachel's song was inspirational, et cetera, and things like that in a Guidepost magazine.
Right.
And that was in 1994.
1994, yeah.
And then what's this?
And then all that led to a ton of stories of people writing to me their stories about how my music had touched their lives.
Right.
50,000 people I've heard from, and these are notes and letters.
Right.
And not counting all the emails and other communications. So
wow.
The music has literally, when you hear Rachel's song, I would just venture to say you're going to be touched by the song.
Right.
And it depends upon what condition, what mood you're in, what emotional state you're in. You know, if you're happy or if you're grieving for something or you're going through a hard time or you're stressed out or whatever, the music seems to reach into your soul and touch the right parts of it to move you to where you need to be.
So the title wasn't that hard to do there, was it?
No, it wasn't. This title has been around quite a while, Touched by the Music.
Right.
And because if you read all those 50,000 notes that I've gotten, and I reprinted a lot of them in the book. Chapter 21 is a reprint of a lot of those.
Right.
They're unanimous in saying that the music gave them peace, it gave them joy, it gave them relaxation, it helped relieve their stress, it got them through really, really tough times and that kind of thing. And so I thought, well, they really are touched by the music. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much by me or anything I did, it's the song and the music is what touches them. And this article in Guideposts came about from one of those people who was touched by the music.
Right.
Her name is Roberta Mesner.
Okay.
If you do a Google on Roberta Mesner and Guideposts, you'll see that she is a fabulous writer.
Right.
She writes for Guideposts.
Okay.
And her own personal story is just a tearjerker extraordinaire. It was written up in one last year in Guideposts. But Roberta has become a dear, dear friend of mine. But she was going through some really tough medical issues with her own self that dealt with pain and operations and just a lot of issues that were just giving her a fit. And she found that my music of Rachel's song really significantly lowered her pain level and got her through some of her toughest times. And she happened to call Combs Music on my 800 number one day, and I happened to answer the phone. And she was telling me her story about how my music had touched her and so forth. And she says, I'm a writer for Guidepost. Would you, and I had told her some of the story about how Rachel's song had been written and how I'd been able to quit my job and everything. And she said, wow, that's a great story. So she says, would you allow me to pitch that story to Guidepost and see if they'd like to print it, because it's an inspirational story.
Right.
And so I said, sure. So we set up some times for her to interview me over the phone and whatever. And she wrote up the pitch for the story and pitched it to Guidepost. And she called me back and says, they want to do it. I said, well, all right, let's do it. So she helped me write the article, and it's called Two-Part Harmony.
Right.
In the book here. It's on page 30 of the 1994 September issue of Guidepost, called Two-Part Harmony.
Right.
And fortunately, in the back of the book, they also always put this family room where they say, okay, here's more about the author.
Right.
If you want to get in touch with Dave Combs, here's his phone number and his address. Well, in this little book, it only went out to 3 million people. So if 3 million people read something and get moved by it, you can imagine that some of them are going to write me a letter. And we got over 10,000 letters in the mail in less than 2 weeks. My mailman, he came, we were living on off of the side of a hill, down the hill. Our driveway was real steep. And one day our mailman came dragging my mail in a big old canvas bag that he couldn't even pick up.
Right.
Down the driveway, and he comes, knocks on the front door, and he says, Dave, what have you done?
Who did you make
What
mad?
hell? Who did you take off today? Or this happened for 2 or 3 days in a row. It was just bags after bags of mail came in. Every one of them had a $10 check to send me a cassette, and they hadn't even heard the song. They just read the article, and that just blew me away. That people would be that touched by the story of a song to send me. Some of them just had a $10 bill in the envelope. Said, send me the cassette. So
wow.
And that was when I really realized that I have something here that the good Lord has given me. That, man, I better do what He wants me to do with this song, because it's not mine, it's His.
So how many songs have you written total, you think?
Probably, I know over 120, and I've recorded over 180 because I've recorded other songs like hymns and stuff like that. But over 120 I've written.
You hit a home run you hit a grand slam the first song.
First song.
But I don't think you're a one-hit wonder, though. That's what the great thing is. Could you imagine if it was just that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But the other albums have done really well, and I get the same kind of letters from other songs.
And the Christmas cards.
And Christmas.
I get my Christmas email from you with a little bit of music in it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. So now, all right. So you get Gary Prim's phone number. Just give him a call up. You and Gary are buddies now. All right. Chicken Soup for the Soul. Jack. How do you get Jack?
Well,
the publisher calls him up and asks, and then you talk to Jack, or
I got to know Jack
of course you did.
Last year.
Right.
In November, I went to what he calls his Mastermind Retreat.
Right.
And it was me and 16 other people, and we spent 3 days. This was virtually, of course, on Zoom, but it was like 10 or 12 hours a day, in the morning all the way up to evening, on Zoom with Jack Canfield and his the lady who runs his company, Patty Aubrey, and some other people. But I spent 3 days getting to spend time, and part of that 3 days, I was allotted 35, 40 minutes that it was just me and Jack.
Right.
We bonded really well. First thing he did, he went on iTunes and he bought Rachel's song, downloaded it on his phone. He says, I listened to that song, I played it again. He said, that song is just unbelievable. He was just smitten by the song.
Right.
So Jack and I just kind of clicked. He's a wonderful, wonderful person. And even though he's sold 750 million books is how many books he's sold. But he has become a good friend. And he was so moved by my music. He was touched by my music to the point where he said, I'll write the foreword to your book. You need to tell these stories.
That's nice.
And so that's just the kind of person he is. And so all those stories led to me saying, well, I need to get this out. Not just the music. I need to tell people some of these, because these stories are inspirational. Let's say you're a budding musician. Somebody else may have just written one song. Mm-hmm. Well, I just wrote one song to start with. And so they need to read this and say, well, don't give up on your dream. You know, you can do things, and you can make something happen, and don't think too small. You know, the world's a big place, and with our technology today, you all are having access, and young folks like you are having a wonderful access to. You can create a whole album in your bedroom, as far as that's concerned.
Every night.
Every night, if you want
crazy.
to, you can, and put it on the internet, and somebody halfway around the world can hear it tomorrow. So
now, all right. So I know what a book launch is, having K&S newsstands. I've never had what I've heard of you now say, 300 people come to a virtual book launch. So what the heck's a virtual book launch?
Well,
and that's today. So hopefully you'll tell people about this, and they can come watch you on our Camel City Chat YouTube channel and learn more about you too.
Yeah. Well, it's really just a big party.
Okay.
And if we weren't tied down by this COVID virus thing, we'd be having a big party. I'd probably be renting a room somewhere and inviting all my friends over, and we'd have heavy hors d'oeuvres, and we'd just be celebrating with balloons and everything, and celebrating a party. But so today we're having to do it virtually, over Zoom. And so I've invited people, and it's probably better because people halfway around the world can come to my party. Now I had to limit it to only people that were on my mailing list and that I'm close friends and that kind of thing. But
yes, I did get an invite.
He got an
smart says something. I knew that was coming.
Yeah, but it's just a big celebration. It's a big party.
All right, so I have to ask you this. I'm seeing something here. I'm going to see if I'm correct on this. What's your church?
First Baptist Church, Winston-Salem.
Okay, yeah. See, my grandfather had a heart attack in the first pew of there, and then somebody behind him threw nitroglycerin underneath him. This would have been when he came to town. My grandfather in Alton, Illinois, knew who who was the minister?
Dr. Lally, Randall
No,
Lally?
the one that was around for so long, whose son's out at Center Grove now. Now I can't remember who it is. Dr. Quartz. He knew who Dr. Quartz was. He knew who in that time period. He knew who Mark Quartz was down here at
Calvary.
At Calvary.
Yes.
But they went to First Baptist, and the reason why I ask you that, and you know why, is because I see this name, one of our other guests on here, Dr. Gary Chapman, who is another person that no one knows lives in Winston-Salem.
He is a dear friend. He and Carolyn are close friends. We had dinner with them not too long ago.
Don't tell him you know me or anything. He might not talk to you. But no, I mean, and Dr. Chapman's wonderful.
He is. Now, you talk about, he's in the same league as Jack Canfield.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Gary has sold millions of books.
Yeah, I know. He told us on our episode, we'll have to go back and listen. I think was it 10 million, 100 million? I think it's 100 million.
100 million, yeah. Well,
it's like it's crazy.
But he's such an humble and wonderful person.
Oh, he's
and when
awesome.
I asked Gary, I said, would you be willing to write an endorsement for my book? He said, well, sure, I'd be glad to do that, Dave. And he was very kind to do that. But
it is weird, and because you and I can, I don't have any, books or music, but you and I kind of feel the same way about things. In this case, is calling up Dr. Chapman to ask him to do something. That's like calling a celebrity.
Yeah.
But he's like, Dave, what are you talking about? Just send it over here to me. I'll do it.
That's
it's like when I called him up, I'm like, Dr. Chapman, I'm doing this. Would you be interested? Well, of course. Talk to my assistant will line it up, and I'm like, well, okay. Yeah. I didn't even have to convince him. No. I got other people I call. I got to call 5 times to try and get them to be on the show. Yeah. And it's like, so 300 people will be at your virtual book launch today, obviously. That's the 20th. And what we want you to do is, and we'll put the link in it when we launch, Will it launch that day?
They can order it right on Amazon.
Can they pre-order it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll put the link in with our description so that people can go and order it if they'd like to. We'll put the link to you on there in our description so that people can get to you and find you.
Yeah, and it's going to be available on.
Is it $14.99? Is that the
Yes,
price?
$14.99
So
paperback.
It's paperback, $14.99.
And Kindle and a Kindle ebook.
You can get on Kindle, right?
And if you like to hear, if you get tired, want to hear an East Tennessee accent, you can also buy the audiobook and listen to me read it.
That's awesome.
for 8 hours.
and the goal of doing this all on one day and kind of, as we were able to work it out that we're going to launch you that day as well too, is that if you get enough people that go out and buy the book that day,
it becomes an
then
Amazon
becomes
bestseller.
An Amazon bestseller. Yeah, that's so cool, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's a good thing.
All right, so we got a few minutes left. I want to ask a couple questions, but I always like to ask this when people do say one thing to me. And that's you have a very strong faith in Jesus Christ. I mean, you have a faith in Christ. And I know that that's been a foundation of your life. How much do you feel like your song is just honor in a sense of things? You know what I'm saying? How has your faith affected where you are now, you think?
Well, I feel so humbled by the things that have happened around my music, and that I feel it is my obligation to continue using my platform now.
Right.
That it's growing through my music to express my faith in Jesus Christ through my music. And it's interesting that I have had people write to me. Of course, the song has no words. It's just an instrumental. I have had many people write to me and say, I know you're a Christian. I feel it through your music. And it's been able to reach and touch people. And a lot of people say, it stirred my soul.
Right.
It really touched me that deeply. And so I feel so honored and humbled that I'm just the vehicle that was privileged to receive the song, and now it is my obligation to make sure that it is available and spread as widely as possible so that it can help further other people's faith.
So I'm gonna the condensed version. We got two questions left. One, the condensed version. I'll just ask you. You've been here since '69. You've seen the changes of Winston-Salem. You still love living here?
Well, we're still here,
and they're doing a great job of
yes.
I mean, go downtown and have a drink with your wife. It's
Yeah.
you go get a sweet tea, whatever. I mean, glass of wine, but go and just walk around. You can go one place and it's just crazy, isn't it?
It is absolutely a transformation
Right.
of that downtown area, because I hearken back to when we first moved here. Downtown was a fairly lively retail establishment.
That's a place you go get shoes.
Get shoes and that kind of thing. Go shopping.
Right.
And Haynes Mall didn't even exist. That was
Right.
a farm. And so that was that. And then the downtown kind of began to deteriorate as people started going out to the suburbs and so forth. But I think now it's come back full circle.
Right.
And the revitalization of downtown and the leadership of the people in Winston-Salem, I think, have done a really good job of getting the downtown back to life.
Righted the ship.
Yep, they sure have.
So, notice I tied that back to your... What do you want to be remembered for? This doesn't have to be a demise. This can be just any time. What do you want to be remembered for?
Well, I hope that I'll be remembered for the lives that I've touched through my music, and hopefully the example that my wife and I both have lived all our lives. We sponsor a lot of scholarships at Wake Forest, at Appalachian State University, at East Tennessee State University, and so we're trying to give back, and so I think we want to be just remembered as two people that loved their friends and their family and their community and their nation, and we're just always tried to do the right thing and be encouraging to everybody we met.
And that's one of the things that I love about the two of you is you guys do really care, and that's wonderful. Now, if you ever times get tight or something, you can cut two of those schools out. Okay, but I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking time to be here with us. I appreciate everything that you've done. I wish you the best of luck on the book. I'm so glad that other people through this get to know who you are and why you're another one of Winston-Salem's gems. And I appreciate it. So
Well, I'm just honored and so glad that we connected, and this has been great fun, and I really appreciate it.
And I promise, if we get Linda on, I'll ask her about that if she got those two girls to cancel.
Please do. Now, you do need to get her on. She can tell a lot of stories.
Well, we're going to work on that.
All right.
But folks, check out Dave Combs. We got all the stuff there. Don't forget to check out Smitty's notes. Jeff Smith sponsors us a little bit. I'm sure you remember with Jeff sending out the emails, telling everybody where to be and things like that.
Yep.
And so, but check out Dave Combs and Combs Music, and learn more about the book. Just go ahead and get it up on Amazon. Just search for Touched by Music, Touched by the Music. And Dave Combs is Winston-Salemite, been here since '69. Support our friends here, and we appreciate you. We'll be back next week with more Camel City Chat.